Join the Vintage Cellars Wine Club today to get invitations to exclusive member events, points on every wine purchase, and access to members-only offers. Join today in-store or at vintagecellars.com.au. Vintage Cellars, Australia's fine wine specialists since 1951.
Okay, the man who is with me, I'm told, predicted the September 11 attacks 3 years before they happened, predicted the global financial crisis, predicted the election of Donald Trump. He's described as a global futurist, and Forbes magazine says one of the smartest men in the world. He also has a CV you can't jump over. He's a qualified doctor, computer scientist, psychology, music composition, in fact, very impressive background, teaching, writing, music. Dr. Richard Hames, good morning.
Good morning, Neil.
Anything you can't do?
Yeah, lots, I'm afraid.
Music. I'm fascinated by your involvement in music. Is that a love?
Oh, yeah, that was from a very early age. I was writing music from the age of 5, and then I was a cathedral chorister, and, it's just in the blood.
Do you still write music?
No, I don't have time. As soon as I started writing books, the first one was The Management Myth, I didn't have time to write music. I had to choose, and not many people were listening to my music. It gave the ears a good bashing, and it wasn't very popular.
It must be enormously satisfying to do it, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what about medicine? You have time to practice medicine?
No, I gave that up very early because I was working in paediatric oncology at a time when, we knew nothing about leukemia, and it was palliative care, and it was so depressing. So I just had to get away from that.
We have made enormous improvements in that area, though.
Oh, yeah, it's huge.
Yeah. Well, how did you get into paediatric oncology? I would have thought that would be one of the toughest areas.
It was the specialism that you had to do. From general medicine, you had to do a specialist course, and that was me. I chose to do that.
Are the reports fair? You did predict the attack on the World Trade Center?
Yeah. You have to remember that as a foresight practitioner, predictions are, if you like, the tip of the iceberg. The bulk of the work is not predictions. It's really understanding better the patterns, the deep patterns in society. So the research is all about what is under the tip of the iceberg. And predictions, when we see there is a theme running across 4 or 5 or even 6 different interpretations of what's happening, but you get the same theme, then the prediction is, hey, look at this, pay attention to this, we've got to do something about this, it needs some kind of response.
What's your focus at the moment?
Focus is mostly on the way capitalism is morphing into something very different.
What's it becoming?
Well, it's always capitalism, the economy generally has always changed, but it's becoming much more of a surveillance kind of capitalism, where the traditional thing is capital and labour, of course, the tension between that. Now it's more the tension between the observer and the observed. All the Googles and the Facebooks of this world make their money from observing us, and someone like yourself, a celebrity like yourself, would have probably 900 to 1,000 different psychological data points that they know about you. I mean, they probably know more about you than your mother did.
No, that wouldn't be hard. I kept that secret. You optimistic about the future?
I'm optimistic about human ingenuity, but I'm pessimistic about the fact that we seem to be in a gridlock at the moment where we can't push forward to solve the more existential problems facing humanity. We seem to be trapped in this complacency that I think is...
Well, what do we need to do? If we can break through the complacency, what do we need to do?
I think we need to go back to first principles and redesign our most life-critical systems from first principles using the evidence and the knowledge we have today, rather than what we used to believe was how the world worked. The world doesn't work like that any longer. Things don't work the same, and I think we need to adapt more quickly and become more resilient in that context.
Well, how does the world work?
Well, the world is not a universe, it's a pluriverse. In other words, we need to take notice of different cultures and not be as arrogant. I think a bit of humility goes a long way.
Well, other cultures. There's a lot of focus in this country at the moment, as you're well aware, on our relationship with China. We have an Australian citizen held without charge for 7 months. We've got this tension in the region with their bases developing. We've got them interfering, hacking into our political system, trying to buy favours. We've got them at universities. There is a tension developing which the government is trying to avoid, but it's there.
Yes.
Where do you see that? And then underlying all that, of course, the economic tension, which these what is it? 2/3 of our exports go to China. Where are we going? Where are you going with China?
2/3, yes. I mean, when you're talking about trade, up to 2/3, if you're talking iron ore and gas and agricultural products, in general, it's about 1/3 of our trade is with China. From China's point of view, of course, it's only 1% their trade with Australia. But I think for me, Neil, the most important thing is the context. Where you're coming from is the context. So if it's a choice between defense and the alliance with the US or trade, and the relationships we should be developing with China, then each of those contexts will have a different outcome. So we inevitably have to choose where we believe is most favourable for Australia. And I believe we shouldn't continue to look at China through the obsolete lens of empire, which is the US way of looking at China. The US believes that China is wanting to be like take over from the US as the major global power. That in no way is what China wants.
Well, we've been told by various analysts and some futurists that it's prosperity versus security. Security with the United States, prosperity with China.
Yeah.
Is it that blunt?
Well, the problem is if you use Cartesian logic, then you'll always go left, right, black, white, either or. I don't see it like that. I think we should be trying to transcend those two extremes and find a middle ground so that we can have both.
But intellectually, can we do that with China? We seem to be opposed on so many levels.
I think we can. I think, again, it's just coming from a different framework, just coming from a different context, and reframing our notions of what their aspirations are, what their legitimate aspirations are, and how those align with ours.
But you can never remove the fact that we're Europeans in Asia. Is that a factor? Is that a context?
Oh, I don't think it is now. If you look at Australia, I've been wandering around Melbourne yesterday. I was just staggered by the number of Asians here. I mean, it's like Hong Kong.
Well, that's true, but we're still a European-based country, I suppose. Well, that's an interesting point you raise. How long since you've been in Australia?
We went back to Thailand in September, and I'd been living here for 3 years. So I come and go. I mean, I'm here every few weeks. Okay.
What do you see? And there's this speculation today from even Peter Costello, respected treasurer, John Hewson, academic, economist, and a former opposition leader, both warning signs about recession.
Yes.
And they, you know how much I hate using the R word, but warning signs about recession. Do you think we're headed towards recession?
Yes, without doubt. You were going to say why?
Yeah.
If you look at all the signs in terms of household debt, amount of household debt in Australia is extraordinary. I mean, we're probably the worst in the OECD for debt. If you look at the response of reserve banks around the world, now about 30 reserve banks are lowering interest rates. But again, if we come from the traditional orthodox perspective of economics, where we're looking for growth as being important, actually essential, then clearly we're headed technically for a recession. If you reframe that, then does it particularly matter? There are other things that are as important.
Well, does it matter? It won't matter if you can get a job and put food on the table, but will we not have that sort of recession which does endanger people's livelihood?
I think in Australia, unfortunately, we're not going to escape as we did last time with the global financial crisis. I think the recession will bite deeply, and that, I think, because of the coincidence of machine robots, AI really taking a lot of jobs. If you're just looking at manufacturing, for example, possibly anywhere between 40 and 60% of jobs will disappear over the next 5 years. Now, other jobs will become available, but once those jobs go, they've gone.
How close is recession?
I think next year, probably second or third quarter.
International security, where's that headed?
More and more insecure. But from a state point of view, I mean, that's why we're seeing a tightening of the screws. We're getting more and more states trying to cross the T's and dot the I's in a world which is increasingly complex, volatile, ambiguous. So the nation state is, I mean, the whole Westphalian model of nation state and sovereignty is, there's a big question mark over that now.
But are we facing additional increased conflict?
Yes, I think we are. Yeah.
Brexit, where's that going?
I haven't the faintest idea.
Neither's Boris.
It is such a muddle. It is such a mess.
Donald Trump, good or bad for the world?
I think, you see, again, my context is we're in transition from the old industrial model and the old industrial age to something different. I think that's a good thing. And I think probably Donald Trump is one of the people who's hastening that transition. Is he important? No, he's not important. He is a distraction. There's no doubt about that. There's a lot going on that we're not paying attention to that we should be, simply because of his tweets.
Such as?
There's a big land grab, for example, in the Midwest in the US that we're not paying any attention to.
Is it a heavy burden being a futurist?
Yeah, I call it the burden of knowing. And yes, it is. It weighs heavily.
A foresight practitioner.
Yeah.
Is it really? Are you being serious?
Yeah, I'm being serious. It weighs heavily.
How do you live with it?
Well, you said, am I an optimist? I'm optimistic about human ingenuity. And when you talk to individuals like we're talking here, and you talk to one human talking to another human, then you have to be optimistic. Unfortunately, when we get together in parliaments and cabinets and boardrooms, we become stupid. I don't know why that's the case.
Thank you so much for your time. It's great to meet you. I look forward to it. Look forward to further speeches. Thank you very much, Dr. Richard Hames, Global Futurist.